At Sunday dinner, I finally said it. I am not your favorite, and we both know it. The room froze, the game went silent, and my mom reached for the pears like sweetness could fix the moment. What happened next? A boundary, a family meeting, a card of new rules, and the first ordinary day where I was actually seen. Stay. This ends with love that looks different and works. I chose Sunday afternoon because the house is kindest then. Sunlight on the table, soup on the stove, everyone pretending time is gentle. I had rehearsed one line until it felt like a small stone I could carry. I am not your favorite. And we both know it. My mother was slicing pears for a dessert she makes when my brother visits. He arrived with a big story. She smiled, and the air turned warm. We ate while the small rituals performed themselves. She served him first, asked follow-up questions, and laughed in the places his sentences invited applause. When I complimented the soup, she said it needed more salt, then returned to his project at work. It is not a crime, it is a pattern, and patterns teach the body what to expect. After dishes, I asked to sit with my mother alone. My brother moved to the couch, my father went to the garage. I folded my hands and said what I had practiced. For years I have felt like the reliable daughter, the one with a casserole and a plan. The one you call when the sink moans or the calendar forgets itself. I am proud of being steady, but steadiness should not be confused with invisibility. I want a relationship that does not ask me to disappear so the room can shine on someone else. She stared as if I had set a glass down too hard. She asked why I was trying to hurt her. I said I was not. I was trying to stop being hurt quietly. She said this family does not play favorites. I said that may be the story, but it is not what my body knows. I named small things. Who gets the first call when news lands? Who is forgiven before the apology finishes? Whose mistakes become funny stories, and whose careful work fades into background music? The birthday post with many photos of him and one of me holding the cake I baked. The way my ideas at the table become better when my brother repeats them later. She folded her hands. She said she loves us both, and that love is not a scale. I said attention is a currency, and I am done paying fees. I do not need her to deny what she feels. I need her to stop expecting me to pretend I do not notice it. I set the boundary I was bringing. I will not host without warning. I will not cancel plans because someone remembered me at the last minute. I will not explain a no more than once. I will show up because I choose to, not because I am a convenient shape. She asked if this was about my brother. I said it was about me. She asked if I expected her to love us equally. I said I expected her to treat me as a person, not a tool. The living room grew louder, the game trying to be a shield. My father stood in the doorway. My brother hovered, uneasy. I repeated my sentence for the room, not in anger but as a fact that wanted light. Your favorite child is not me. No one contradicted me. The silence did the work. Then I added one promise. I am not leaving this family. I am leaving the role that made me small. I asked for respect for that choice. I said I would give it time and measure change on ordinary days. My mother picked up the pears and set them down again. My father asked if anyone wanted tea. My brother turned the volume down and did not meet my eyes. I stood, steady, and felt the room learn a new angle. The day after felt thinner, as if the house had given up a layer of insulation. My mother texted a weather update and a photo of the dog, then did not mention what we had named. My brother sent a clip from the game, a small peace offering. My father called to ask if my car needed anything, which is how he says I love you when words feel heavy. I went to work and tried to behave like a person who had not moved a wall inside her own home. In the afternoon, my aunt phoned about a recipe and asked if I was all right. I said I was fine and changed the subject to herbs. At night, I wrote down what I wanted from the next week so I would not drift. I wanted steady contact without performance. I wanted my mother to ask me a follow-up question that was not about my brother. I wanted ordinary proof. On Tuesday, my mother invited me to lunch near the library. She arrived with a careful smile and small stories about neighbors. She asked about my project, and when I answered, she asked another question, and another. The relief came with a sting because the effort was visible. I thanked her anyway. She said she had been thinking about childhood, about how I finished homework without coaxing, and how my brother needed coaxing for everything. She said maybe she had been spending coaxing like a currency for so long that habit felt like care. I said habit is not the same as love, and it is not the same as respect. She nodded and looked at the sugar packets as if they were a puzzle. On Wednesday, I visited after work. My brother was still at the office, and my father was in the yard tinkering with a gate that has always worked. My mother and I cooked together in a quiet that felt new. When my brother arrived, she greeted him, then asked me to tell him about my deadline. He listened and asked 2 thoughtful questions, and a door eased on its hinges. Later, when we sat to eat, my mother put bread on my plate first without dramatics. I noticed and said nothing because I did not want proof to live only in symbols. I wanted consistency. That night, my brother texted a photo of the pears with a caption that said, "Next time you pick dessert." It was a small, bright thing. Thursday brought backlash. A cousin messaged that she heard I was upset about attention and that she had always thought I got plenty. I put the phone down, then sent a short note that said I was working on my relationship with my mother and it did not require a jury. She replied with a heart and a sentence about families being complicated. Friday, my mother asked if we could go to the market on Saturday morning. We walked aisles and chose fruit and argued gently about brands. Near checkout, she stopped and said she was sorry for not seeing me clearly. She said she could not promise instant change, but she could promise attention. I said I could promise patience if I could also promise honesty. She squeezed my hand and paid for the apples I had picked. Sunday came again. I arrived with simple flowers. My brother told a long story. My mother listened, then turned to me and asked about a small win I had mentioned earlier. It felt unspectacular and right. My father brought tea without being asked. The game stayed on low, as if the television understood we were practicing a new volume. In the evening, my mother sent me home with leftovers and a question about the next time we would walk. I answered with a date and a time. That night, I thought about how change rarely arrives as a trumpet. It arrives as a different seat at the table, as a question asked on purpose, as bread placed without ceremony. I knew setbacks would come. I also knew I had named a boundary that would not unlatch. I fell asleep, not triumphant, only steadier. By the third week, the house had learned our new weather, and then a cold front arrived without warning. My mother called on a Thursday morning and said some relatives were coming Sunday, and she hoped I could bring my famous roast and also help set the table early. I heard the old script in her tone, the one that counts on my yes. I said I could come at 4 with a salad, not at noon with a roast, and I could help for an hour. She went quiet, then said never mind, she would figure it out. Silence on a phone can sound like punishment. I texted later and asked if she was upset. She said she was not, she was adjusting. Sunday arrived bright and loud. Aunts filled the kitchen with advice. Uncles filled the living room with stories. Cousins drifted between rooms like weather. My brother told a joke and the room laughed. I set my salad on the counter and greeted everyone. An aunt asked if I was taking more time for myself now that I was less busy, and I smiled without answering her rhythm. During dessert, someone asked my mother to say a few words about family. She spoke about loyalty and sacrifice and how we show up for each other without needing to be asked. Her eyes found mine and held there a breath longer than necessary. The room murmured. I placed my fork down and asked if I could add something. I said showing up works best when it is asked for with respect and answered with choice. A cousin rolled her eyes. My brother studied his plate. My father cleared his throat and suggested we all take a walk after coffee. In the hallway, he told me my timing had been sharp. I said the speech had been sharp. We looked at each other like two people trying to read a map drawn by someone else. The next day, my mother suggested a family meeting with a mediator, not for conflict, she said, but for clarity. I agreed, because rooms with chairs and rules help my words hold shape. On Tuesday evening, we sat in a small office with a plant that looked braver than it was. The mediator asked us to speak in turns. My mother described her childhood, the scarcity, the way attention was earned by effort in crisis. She said she had learned to spend energy where the fire seemed hottest. My father said he had learned to avoid sparks. I said I did not want to compete with the fire. I wanted to be seen without having to burn. The mediator nodded and asked each of us what change would look like in an ordinary week. My mother said she would ask me first about my day, and not third. She said she would plan tasks in advance and ask for help rather than assume it. My father said he would rotate chores on Sundays without me as default. My brother, who had come because I asked, said he would stop speaking over me at the table, and he would ask me questions that did not end with advice. I said I would give clear yes and clear no, and I would not narrate my decision beyond one sentence. We wrote these on a single page, and the mediator suggested we review in a month. On the way out, my mother slipped her arm through mine and said she was trying. I said I could feel. The first week after the meeting went smoothly. We tried. The turning point arrived on a plain Wednesday evening when the sky looked undecided. My mother called and asked if I could stop by after work, just me. I said yes because the tone in her voice had a weight I recognized from storms. In the kitchen, she had made tea and laid out the nice cups she saves for guests. We sat with our hands wrapped around heat like it could help us hold our sentences. She said she had been reading old journals, and that she never meant to hurt me. She said she understood why I felt as I did, and that understanding without change would be a poor apology. Then she surprised me. She said that if she had to name a favorite once, in a private moment, she would say my brother has always made her feel needed, and that feeling had been her shelter when life went cold. She said she had chased that feeling without noticing what it cost me. I did not speak for a long breath because I wanted to hear the whole paragraph. I asked what she wanted now. She said she wanted to love me in ways I could feel. She said she wanted instruction, not because she could not think, but because she did not trust habit. I said I could give a few simple measures. Ask me first about my day 3 times a week. Invite me into plans with notice. Do not use me as the helper of last resort. Give me credit out loud when my idea leads to something good. Defend my turn to speak at the table. Tell me when you are proud of me without tying it to what I do for you. She wrote them down on a card and read them back. Her voice was not dramatic. It was careful. She asked me for one more thing, which was patience when she failed and a signal I could give that did not shame her in front of others. I said I could touch my cup twice. She laughed, a small sound, and set her cup down to practice. We sat there like 2 women building a bridge, plank by plank. My father came in and saw the cups in the card. He asked if there was a test he needed to study for. I said there was a list we were trying. And he said lists were his love language. He added 2 lines for himself. Rotate chores without assuming I am the strong pair of hands. Ask about my week without tying it to a task I need done. My mother sighed with relief and said now we were all students. That weekend, the family gathered again for a small birthday. The table felt different because the card sat beside the salt like a quiet guest. My brother started to tell a story over mine, and my mother held up a finger and said, "Let her finish." He stopped, blinked, and smiled in a sheepish way I had not seen since we were small. My father asked me first about a detail from my project, and then asked a second question, and a third. I answered and felt my own voice grow taller in the room. Later, my mother turned to my brother and asked him to help clean up while I sat and drank tea. He did, and the sky outside shifted from undecided to clear. On the walk to my car, my mother hugged me longer than usual. We were learning. It felt simple, clear, and possible. A month later, we returned to the mediator with our page creased and a few coffee stains that looked like proof of use. He asked how the month had gone, and my mother answered first. She said the card had been a good compass, and the signal had saved her from 3 old habits at least. My father said the chore rotation had revealed how many tasks he had assumed lived under my hands. My brother admitted he had not noticed how often he jumped in until the room stayed quiet for me to finish. I said I felt less like furniture and more like a person who took up a chair on purpose. The mediator smiled the way people smile when a plan meets a lived week. He asked what had been hard. My mother said the hardest part was hearing relatives question why we were making rules for something love should manage. She said she had answered that love and rules can work together. My father said the hardest part was not making jokes when he felt awkward. I said the hardest part was the fatigue that follows change like a shadow. The mediator asked what we wanted next. We decided to keep the page and to add a second column for notes. My mother wrote ask about her news first, then circled it. My father wrote do not ask for help with a task inside a question that begins with how are you. My brother wrote let silence do its job. After the meeting, we went for coffee and did not talk about the card at all. Instead, we talked about a neighbor who had planted tomatoes, about a movie that made my mother cry, about a headline that made my father rant. On the way home, my mother asked if I would help her clean out a closet next month, not next weekend, and she asked with a tone that let me say no. I said yes because the schedule respected me. That week, we practiced more of the ordinary. My mother texted me a photo of a scarf and asked my opinion before buying it. I sent a picture of my desk plant and she told me to give it more light. My father called and actually talked about his week without attaching a task to the end. My brother invited me to lunch and asked about a decision I was weighing, then listened without offering advice until I asked. There were stumbles. At a family dinner, an aunt asked who the favorite was now, joking, and my mother said we do not do that here and passed the bread. At the same dinner, my brother interrupted me once, stopped himself, and said sorry, keep going. I kept going, and the table did not crack. A few days later, my mother forgot and asked me at 6 in the morning to pick up a package across town. I touched my cup twice on the counter and texted her at 8 that I could not. She sent back understood and a heart, and later she told me she had made other arrangements. I thanked her for the message and we moved on. In small ways, the house felt different. The dog slept by my chair again. The game volume found a middle. The pairs appeared on a weeknight for no reason other than sweetness. I still brought soup sometimes, but the pot felt lighter because I had not been drafted to. I learned to trust the pattern by counting ordinary days. It kept holding. We exhaled. Resolution did not arrive like a parade. It came like clean air through a window that had been stuck too long. I kept the card my mother wrote in the drawer by the stove, not as a threat, but as a recipe. On Monday nights, I text her photos of dinner, and she responds with small questions about taste and timing that are really about care. My father started a habit of calling me on Thursdays to talk about nothing urgent. He tells me about the bird feeder and the neighbor with the blue mailbox and the way the light moves across the fence like a patient cat. My brother and I meet for coffee twice a month without a referee. Sometimes we still slide into old shapes. Then we notice, and we step back. I do not try to fix the weather for everyone. I carry an umbrella and let other people decide whether to get wet. The house learned to speak a different language. On my birthday, my mother posted 3 photos of me that were not of me holding a cake. In the caption, she wrote that she loves the way I think, and I reread that line twice because it held what I had asked for. At dinner, she asked me about a small idea I had, and she asked a second question, and then she sat back as if to make room for my answer to be the center. The game was off. The dog slept by my chair. My father offered me the last piece of bread and did not pretend it was nothing. Later, when the kitchen went to that soft clatter it knows, my mother touched my elbow twice without needing the signal. She said she had told an aunt that we do not do favorites here, and that if she slipped she would correct herself. I said I appreciated the sentence as much as the effort. We washed the bowls and put them away like people who plan to use them again soon. In my own apartment, the quiet changed color. It no longer sounded like a test. It sounded like space I had purchased with a sentence spoken on a Sunday. I still visit often, and I still leave when I choose. I still bring soup, and sometimes I bring nothing and the table holds anyway. When people ask how it went after I said the line, I tell them the truth. It went slowly, and then it went. There were stings and repairs. We made a list and then we learned how to live without looking at it. I learned that being seen is not a favor a parent bestows, it is a practice two adults share. My mother learned that care can be spread without being diluted. My father learned to ask before he hands me a job that belongs to his own hands. My brother learned that conversation is not a contest any more than attention is a prize. We are not saints. Sometimes she forgets and I touch my cup. Sometimes I am sharp and I go back and soften the edge without erasing the point. At the end of the season, we reviewed the page and laughed at the stains and wrote one last line. Remember that love is not a scale, and attention is not a bribe. We pinned that line to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a pear. On a walk in early evening, my mother asked if I felt different now. I felt steady, seen, and at home. I went home calm tonight.